Ingram Smith, Bud Elliott back. Bud, this will be our final positional preview podcast. It will also be much more of a traditional podcast as well. So we've got a couple other subjects to cover, some relatively went live about an hour ago. She want to try to figure out a couple different things. And yeah, that's significant. I'm talking about Mason Smith. We'll get there in a second as well. But I want to start the show by thanking a sponsor. And these are people that we have worked with before and are very excited to do it again. It is your old friends at Home Field. Home Field is a fantastic vintage clothing company specializing in collegiate athletic gear. It is homefieldapparel.com. People that we've worked with before, people that I've legitimately, like I gave my mom a vintage hoodie a couple years ago for Christmas. It's one of the favorite things that she has. My wife has all sorts of Home Field stuff. Excited to work with people that we legitimately and authentically love their gear, and Home Field is no different. So excited to have Home Field back on board for 2023, and would direct you to their webpage as they actually launched a new line of Florida State gear today, Bud. So I know the bomber jacket was something that immediately caught both of our eyes.
100%. I'm really excited to go and scoop that bomber jacket. Like I have the OG starter jacket, right? With the weed pouch in good condition. And I live in Orlando, and I can't use it, right? This bomber jacket though, I could use for like at least 4 months in Orlando. Also, I will note, we do all have that one friend who still brings up the old logo debate, right? If you have an old logo
I know that
friend,
I have one.
If you are the old logo friend, this Home Field collection is for you. That 1993 Orange Bowl shirt, yeah, got that one on there. We also have it with where are we at? There's another shirt. There's
the quarter zip with the old logo. That's
the quarter zip with the old logo. Exactly. We also have a hoodie, which I think is old logo. The home of the Noles showing the old school stadium, like the more the erector set, looks to be old logo. The Seminoles 1993 champs tee certainly is old logo. Let me see what else. The joggers look extremely comfortable, and I like the old interlocking FSU. The problem is, I got to buy 2 pairs because my wife's going to steal, like 100%. So
it's the Maggie tax. Absolutely,
yeah, exactly right.
Homefieldapparel.com. Go there, take a look. Florida State coupon code, I believe, is Nolecast, which will get you a discount at time of checkout as well. So big thanks to our friends at Home Field, and excited to continue to work with them.
One ordering note. Everything I got from last time fit awesome. The Osceola and Renegade tee. So I'm 6'2", 214. That's the only one that I would have sized up from an XL to an XXL. So if you're somebody who works out a little bit, but probably not like every single day, and you're kind of between an X and a double X, or between a large and extra large, that's the one you may want to consider sizing up. Other than that, everything I bought from last time, it fit great, and I still wear it. So can't recommend enough. And Home Field loves supporting like small businesses because they are one themselves, although they're obviously really successful now, but still. And you can help support our sponsors.
Have Mason you been on Smith, bud? Let's start there.
I was going to talk. Okay, let's start Mason Smith. Let's throw it back to Tampa. Shout out Tampa Noles for having us. That was awesome. We talked about like how the LSU game could go. Gave those folks a little mini preview. And I said, look, I think Maurice Smith is a good player. He's certainly an upper half center in the ACC. He held off Casey Roddick's challenge in the spring to keep his center job, and he's a fairly accomplished player. He's also not a dominant physical presence, right? Guy's gotten bigger, has worked really hard. I think Maurice Smith Maurice Smith. He probably gets a very high percentage out of his body that he possibly can. You know what I'm saying? there was certainly a chance in this ball game that Mason Smith, who I think Rivals had as like the number one player in the country, all of us had him as like a top 4 or top 5 player in the country coming out of high school, just a physical freak of freaks. Now he tore his ACL in the opening series against the Noles last year, celebrating a stop, and he ends up coming back. Apparently had some really good days in camp, had also been banged up a little bit in camp. So that entering the game, I was like, okay, I don't know how many snaps this guy's going to play. He's probably not in shape to play 70 snaps coming off ACL and dealing with a bit of an ankle thing in camp. But there's still, okay, much better, lighting wise. There will still exist the possibility, and if you're listening on audio, Graham just swapped his camera and lighting, so I wasn't sure if we were going like on a tour of his office or not. There still exists the possibility that at his absolute best, that's an if he was able to reach that, because I don't know that he would be able to necessarily. It's off an ACL, like not crazy fast timeline, but certainly somewhat of a timeline. That he gives you all worlds of trouble in this ball game, because his ceiling is like top 5 pick. That's a game record type ceiling. Again, not guaranteed to reach the ceiling, but that sort of fear exists going into that ball game if he's going to play that ball game. However, the New Orleans Times Picayune, I believe it is, right, NOLA.com, is reporting that their sources say he'll be suspended for this game for accepting illegal benefits or whatever. Improper, not illegal. Yes, definitely not illegal.
I will be interested to see what improper benefits look like in the year 2023.
Maybe they're like Taylor Swift tickets.
I mean, it would. I'm legitimately very interested to see what that is.
Yes.
So, no, I mean, look, Maurice Smith is a super impressive guy. When you talk to defensive linemen, they will go out of their way to say that Mo is frequently one of the tougher linemen to go up against in practice, because he's smart, because he's exceptionally wise in how to use his hands, and that he may not always like block you, like, drive block you, but it's not uncommon that you kind of think you're getting penetration, then you realize that Mo's just kind of ushered you exactly where he wants you to go. He's also, relatively speaking, for the year 2023, a little undersized at this point, and that's after him making significant gains to put on and keep and retain weight, which hasn't been easy, and he's worked his rear end off to do. Look, man, I think the world of Mo Smith. I wouldn't want Mo Smith to try to block a future 4, top 5 pick.
Right.
This is a big deal. Even if this guy was only going to give you 25 or 35 snaps, this is significant. Now, don't, look to Vegas. Don't think that we're now going to beat LSU by 21 because the defensive tackle's not there or something like that. And when I say look to Vegas, have perspective as to what a kid like this not being there means and how much the line moves, if it moves at all.
The total has ticked up 1/2 of a point.
Okay.
And the side has not moved at all and this news has been out for about an hour and 10 minutes. So I'll tell you, can I share my odds screen here? I don't know. I probably can. Let me see. I don't know if I've ever actually done this on the show. Here's my odds screen. If I can I do it? How do I share it on? All right, I'm going to share this. We'll see. See if it works. All right, so this is what an odd screen looks like, basically. Okay, if you want to look, this is a move that happened like within the last X number of minutes down here on the bottom of the screen. The game was basically 58, maybe 57.5. Right now, we're looking at 58, maybe 58.5. So if you were sitting at 57.5, now you moved to 58. If you're at 58, you may have moved to 58.5. That's basically what we're at. So almost no movement
the over under
on. Yeah, exactly, and almost no movement on the side. So Yeah, that's what an odd screen looks like. So it's kind of like if you're in the stocks.
Yeah.
Similar.
Yeah,
I
big
still
deal.
think this is a big deal. I do.
Yep.
Like, because it's, and LSU still has good D linemen. Like, Wingo is still very good. And like, you're not just going to kick Wingo's ass all night, right? Like, he's still a very good player. And Guillory's still a good player. I don't think those guys have like top 10 pick ceilings. And so it sort of forecloses the opportunity to get just like Jalen Carter, ask Tennessee last year how that was with a guy who hadn't played a whole lot of snaps all year because of some fitness issues and some nagging injuries. All of a sudden got healthy enough to give him like 30 good snaps and just ruins your game plan. I think that's a fairly big deal. Everybody else in that D line, it won't be easy, but you can block them. I don't know if that kid was playing at 100% of his capacity, if you had a good chance to block him consistently.
Yeah, significant. We'll keep an eye out on it. All right, so I want to say one more thing before we leave LSU. Does appear as though they're having kind of like a disjointed camp to an extent. Like I was a little having been behind the curtain a little bit, I was a little surprised they put out on official media today a kid claiming like, "Hey, look, I didn't do well. I'm sorry for losing my cool," or whatever. Like that's an interesting thing to put out on an official channel. I'll put it that
Oh,
way.
I didn't see that.
This is after practice. I think it was either today or yesterday, which is a nice moment. Kid standing up saying, that's not what I should be doing. But like, man, you get in a moment like that supposedly, well, just frequently down there. I'll put it that way. So a little bit of a choppy camp. At the same time, I've been doing this a long time. You have too, bud. Like whenever you start hearing a narrative about, hey, I don't know if this position group can even keep up, or if the secondary even, I mean, it's getting to the point to where people are, I think, are expecting Florida State to go out there and throw for 400 yards or something like that. Be weary of making too many assumptions about, oh, well, I heard this position group hasn't been great at practice. Now, look, if it goes out there and two starters are missing or something like that, or a starter and a significant backup, then that's a little bit different. But like this narrative that's starting to formulate really aggressively, so that LSU may just not know what they're doing in the back half of their defense. I'd pump the brakes on that a little bit.
I would agree with that. I strongly don't think Brian Kelly has forgotten to coach. Matt House is one of the higher rated defensive coordinators that I use in my system, at least. So, and they still are, they still have Harold Perkins and Omar Speights, right? The best linebacker duo in the SEC that doesn't happen to play in Athens, which means they're probably like a top 5, maybe a top 3 linebacker duo in the country. They still have Alexander. They still have Wingo. They still have Guillory. Both of the safeties from last year are back. And the 2 new corners that it looks like you're running out there in Chestnut, who FSU had a good day against last year. If you judge the whole season, the kid was also like an all ACC player. And also Zy Alexander, who was, I guess, one of the absolute best in the FCS. I do not think that LSU's defense is going to suck. Like, I don't think FSU is going to hang a 60 burger or a 50 burger on LSU. I mean, if it turns into some kind of absolute shootout, obviously, yeah, like there's some possibility that like you could have like a 52-45 type game. We don't do we just, at that point, we're like, hey, instant reaction is going to come in the morning because it's 2 a.m. despite these new clock rules being what they are, which should shorten games some this year, actually, which I am not entirely opposed to. Offensively, it seems like they've had a pretty good camp over there. Receivers look to be healthy, and they're kind of putting the narrative out that Daniels is throwing the ball better, which he did down the stretch, I guess. His scrambling was excellent. They've been experimenting with some different offensive line combos. They got this true freshman, Zalance Hurd, who is huge and just all kinds of nasty. We had him at the All-American Bowl, and he's kind of one of those kids you just got to tell, like, hey, stop. Like, you can't block people this hard during an All-Star week. So I guess they're trying to get him on the field some. It's very interesting. Tight end, I think they're pretty good. Running backs, though, I will say, it's just so weird to say if you've grown up watching college football for the last quarter century. I'm not really sure LSU has difference makers at back right now. They got guys that are banged up, and apparently nobody's really separating. So they may have to come out and check it quite a bit. They really didn't run the ball on you all that well last year. So we'll have to see how Florida State holds up on the defensive interior. I know Fisk had a big day today at practice. Chris Fowler was there to see that in person. So yeah, man, I even though I think Mason Smith is probably only going to give you max 45 snaps, I would think that's still a pretty big deal to me. Just in terms of, doesn't mean you win the game. I do think it severely cuts down the chance that you get blown out or something like that. I don't think you're going to get dominated at the line of scrimmage at this point. And not that I really did before, but certainly the possibility of that existed if that kid was really on top of his game and just wrecking your stuff. So yeah, man. All right. What say? So do you want to just go team by team on FSU's schedule and just sort of give a little camp update, what we've learned? I think people liked this last time we did it. But first I want to go to Twitter. Can we discuss some Twitter happenings?
Sure. Yeah, this is I'm generally and genuinely interested in where this is going.
How what are your interests in poultry, sir?
Oh, this is Miami Twitter. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I know thing
I
about
love
chicken
Miami
or two.
sports.
Definitely. Yeah, incredible. It's been one of the funniest things that's occurred in quite a long time. We are talking about, of course, the chicken man that is running around Johnny Appleseeding Florida State's NIL activities and so much more. Dude, this is
this is great.
This is just crazy. I was at a Braves game with a
man.
couple friends of mine last night, and we were dying laughing with this.
Oh my gosh, dude! It's amazing. Miami might be the only fan base out there legitimately here, and part of it's because I do think their sites do a great job. But does Miami have more message boarders than it does actual fans in the stands? I always think about it, man, if I could just get 2/3 of Doak to listen to the Nolecast every episode, I would just do Nolecast, right? And we do really good download numbers. But if you're in that 70 or 60,000 per episode number, that's pretty serious. We might start making thumbnails on YouTube if we did those kind of download numbers on the audio side. Miami fans on there's a million Miami websites and they all do well. And there's these huge Miami communities. I'm somebody should just blow their mind one day and tell them drop a pin for the stadium so they can go find it. Can you imagine? What if you had Miami Internet Day at Sun Life Stadium, or what's it called now? Hard Rock.
Is it Hard Rock now?
What if you did Miami Miami Internet Day?
Yeah, E-Fan Day.
Her E-Cane Day. Yeah, dude. That'd be amazing.
The chicken stuff is amazing. Hilarious. There's some. Yeah, I don't even know what to say about that. That's just absurd. And then interesting. This is not quite chicken level insanity, but some of the conversation that has been in play for the last 48 hours or so about Florida State staff doesn't want to play kids that it signed from high school, or some of just the other madness that has been out there about Florida State's use of the transfer portal. And look, the Florida State coaching staff has known that this card was going to be played against them for a long time now. So this doesn't come as a complete surprise. But I mean, I almost want to just completely dismiss this, but this is just loser talk. I mean, this is what happens when you're getting your rear handed to you, and you've got to reach for stuff Mike Norvell's staff didn't really develop Jordan Travis because despite the fact that he, had been on campus when Mike was hired and kid, almost quit the sport, that somehow that staff didn't really develop him because he happened to originally sign with Louisville out of Cardinal Newman or Gibbons or wherever he's from down there in South Florida. Madness. Madness. I mean, Jay Corbin, they developed the hell out of that kid at a level that I wasn't sure you'd be able to. It's a lot. Look, I would say Jermaine Johnson's really the only kid they've gotten out of the portal that was like gift packaged. This kid has a chance to be a star.
Yeah.
Everybody else they've developed, and the class that's being put together right now from a ranking perspective, I think would certainly do a massive amount of damage to the line that, hey, these coaches aren't going to recruit from high school and are going to replace you, etc. I don't even know this narrative, Bud, will be that good 2 to 3 weeks into the season. I mean, if Edwin Joseph is running around knocking down balls against LSU on Sunday night, are you really going to be able to tell kids that Florida State doesn't develop high school kids? I mean, I doesn't, have that priority. I just think this is a big reach. And, I think a lot of schools have learned a lesson from what's transpired with Florida State over the last 8 months. So, like, don't go around pocket watching and just be like, oh, this school's broke, blah, blah, blah. But let's also not act like it wasn't a serious financial commitment for Miami to bring in Cristobal in the manner that they did, and that the guy who was previously funding their NIL has a stock that trades for cents on the dollar. Miami, this was a
Have
big.
you checked it today?
I haven't checked in a while. I haven't had a good chuckle yet, so I'll certainly look at that chart in a little bit. It was a big Miami's. I'm not saying that like, oh, they're all in and this either works with Cristobal or they're they're not going to be able to field a football program or something, but they need this to work. They put a lot of money into it. Fired a coach early, brought in Cristobal from Oregon, paid a lot of money. We'll see how it goes this year. But so far, that of what you pay Mario Cristobal to do is recruit, because you certainly don't pay him all that money to be a game day coach and other things. You haven't lit the world on fire, to put it conservatively.
It did close today at its 52-week low of
Imagine that.
Of 8 cents.
8 cents. I'm surprised it hadn't been delisted yet, actually. I thought that was in the works. And based off where it's been for how long it's been there, it won't be there much longer.
There's an article on Business Wire. Robin Skeller Rudman Endowed LLP announces that MSP Recovery Inc., formerly known as Lionheart Acquisition Group, investors with substantial losses have opportunity to lead the MSP Recovery class action lawsuit. So, interesting. You can Google that for more. I'm not going to devote too much more time to this show. Go back, check the tapes. Florida State knew that it was going to have to combat this narrative. Florida State has been in on taking a large high school class. We did probably a 20 or 30 minute segment about how, even though I don't think the 24 class nationally is as good as 23 or 25, it's still, for image purposes and program health and development purposes, still smart to go ahead and take a full class. And it obviously helps that you're killing it and you're getting like some of the best kids at the top of the cycle. But still, like, FSU knew it. They knew they were going to take basically a full 25 this year regardless. They don't want to have to completely live out of the transfer portal. They did find an exploitable sort of market inefficiency that was the transfer portal there for those first 2 years. And it was absolutely a gamble. We have seen programs do this, have it not work, and totally just jack up what they're doing. See also Texas State. See year 2 of Michigan State. I mean, Ole Miss recently has taken some guys. Some have worked out tremendously. Some have really kind of flopped almost immediately upon getting on campus. So FSU deserves a lot of credit for getting the right guys in the portal, for doing well. And also, hasn't Miami taken more players in the portal over the last 2 years than Florida State has?
Yeah, they have. I mean, it's a weak narrative. It's a weak grasping at straws, in my opinion. look, Mike, we don't need to relive this. You've heard this conversation. Mike came in, took the job, global pandemic. You're not going to sign almost anybody in that class that didn't have an idea as to the coaching staff and what they were getting into. When you can't visit places and you're a first year staff, good luck recruiting in a global pandemic.
Yeah.
This is really silly talk, and this is talk that may be able to land for a couple days, and then people forget about it and be like, oh yeah, Florida State's the number 8 team in the country and playing LSU for, one of the more hype games of the year. Like, I just don't know that this argument has a whole lot of staying power. So we'll see.
Yeah. Miami has to recruit well. That's basically Cristobal's track record. He's just going to try to out-talent everybody. He is legitimately a really good recruiter. Obviously, I think what's going on, like we detailed earlier in the show, has probably hurt their recruiting. If you don't think they're hearing some negative recruiting about that, like if you can just Google a stock price and be like, hey, by the way, So negative recruiting absolutely goes on in this sport. I got to say this the right way because staffs will get on me about this. I'm not going to say that every staff does negative recruiting. Every staff absolutely uses some form of comparative recruiting because in order to put the proper frame of reference around what you're trying to sell, it is sometimes helpful to highlight the differences between what you do and what other programs do. If she's got a top 5 class right now, and we will see how things keep going. Miami, certainly with their schedule this year. I mean, it's not the hardest schedule in the world. It's Bill Connolly has them 49th in the country. If they're really developing all that high school talent, if they got the coordinator hires right this time around that they botched both last time, they should go like 9-3, right? Maybe a 10-2. If the high school talent development is going as well as Kane's Twitter thinks it is. But when I read the Kane sites I trust, that's not what they are predicting. Mm-hmm. They are predicting 7-5, 8-4, which tells me that maybe that development isn't going that great. Or maybe that level of talent there at the high school level is not quite that good. So we'll see. I mean, they do have A&M on the schedule. They lost A&M last year. 7 teams managed, including App State, managed not to do that. They have Georgia Tech on the schedule. At home, probably should handle them. At North Carolina, Clemson, Virginia, at NC State, at Florida State, right after that, Louisville, and then at Boston College. So, all right. Well, we did want to do something tonight, though, which is kind of point out some of the good that we're seeing in some of these teams. A lot of good reports coming out of Miami about their offensive line, so we'll give them some praise for that. I do legitimately think that they made a large, I can't say a large upgrade when Nick Saban goes and hires the guy who leaves you, right, in Kevin Steele. And Kevin Steele has a pretty good track record, but clearly something was off last year as far as the connection. I think, is Shannon Dawson a big upgrade from the guy they had? I can't really say that, but I think the fit could be, certainly. Like that, I think he could be a much better fit in terms of understanding what works with Tyler Van Dyke. There's a lot of reports out about Colby Young looking good. I mean, if he's a true number 1, and I'll believe it when I see it. I think Restrepo's kind of a nice 2 or 2.5, and maybe Skinner is really emerging as a tight end, or maybe they get Tyler Harrell to play to the level he played, for a little while at Louisville. Maybe they are really just able to push guys around. Like some of the reports they have out, like Bain seems to be a serious hit. Okay. Malgoa seems to be a serious hit. I buy those because I've seen those kids in person. I'm like, yeah.
Look, man, the kid they took from Alabama is damn good player.
Oh, Absolutely. Cohen. And Matt Lee, the center they got from UCF, I voted them as my first team center in the ACC. Yeah. Like everybody that I talked to in the ACC or in the AAC, right, the American, they're like, oh, that kid was a stud, the center. So Yeah, I think the O-line's probably really upgraded, man. I think their linebackers are definitely upgraded. The offensive tackle, Matt Maligo, his brother from Washington State, was a very productive player last year for the Cougars. Now corner's where I kind of hop off this train, dude. When did Miami guys get drafted last year? Both was like a 4th and a 6th rounder. AJ Ivy and Tyreek. No, sorry, 7th for Ivy, and then 2nd round for Tyreek. I mean, you lose 2 drafted corners, and I think the kid they got from Vandy's probably pretty good, actually. Like, just from reading some Vandy practice reports, it seems like they might be missing that kid. And the Devontae Brown kid was a good player for UCF. I believe it when I see it on that. But I do think that, if they really are that good at developing and the coaching hires they made are really something to believe in, they should be going 9-3. You get a lot of layups here if you're actually that good. I don't know. We'll see. I do think Adam Tolliver, our buddy, Prime Discussion, had a pretty good tweet about this. Do you see it?
Is this the one about what opponents thought Mike Norvell would be?
Yeah.
Okay.
So he wrote, I stand by the theory that rivals never thought Norvell would be good. So the mental and emotional gymnastics that they're going through, slowly realizing they were wrong, is a special kind of embarrassing, which is an excellent tweet.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of disagree with it. I think there's
not his first good one. Really?
No,
okay, good. Because I do agree with it. This will be a good conversation.
I think that a lot of rival fans probably, and it's only one word. I think that a lot of rival fans probably thought Mike could be good. But guy from Memphis, the high school recruiting was legitimately poor for the first 2 years. Wasn't getting a whole lot of difference makers in high school. That's certainly changed some last year. If just go out there and watch a little bit, you can tell that they have a lot of hits in the class they just took, and everybody knows the kind of class they're bringing in now. I think that a lot of people in other fan bases thought Mike could be, like we argued about last two shows ago, the Dan Mullen thing. Score a lot of points, be a good developer of talent, good program guy, just not recruit enough to be truly scary. I think they're kind of having their moment.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh shoot, is Norvell figuring out the high level high school recruiting thing? Because if so, that ain't good, because the guy's going to score points, and culturally, his guys like playing for him a lot. I think that's it. It's they never thought he could be great, and now they're like, oh damn it,
yeah.
He already beat us without good high school recruiting, and now
I think opponents or a lot of these fans were quick to write Mike Norvell off. I mean, you had the Marvin Wilson thing, you had the starting out 0-4, losing to Jacksonville State. I mean, you had some really, or Jacksonville State. You had some tough points. You had probably the most disastrous single day in Florida State recruiting. With everybody remembers Travis Hunter, but the Saints kid the night before, 2 nights before, the kid, the Georgia defensive tackle that chose Tennessee, Marvin Jones Jr., who you not even sure you finished second in that rate. You got humiliated, and I think a lot of people just thought they moved on from Willie. They brought this guy in. It's probably going to be here for 3 or 4 years, and they're in a tough place. I think we might overestimate the level of knowledge that people have about other coaching staffs, and they just looked at some informational quick hitters and came to the assumption that this guy's probably not going to make it at Florida State. And to be fair, that wouldn't have been a wild assumption to make after some of those time points that I just listed there. So
I think Mike would tell you that he had to stay true to his beliefs, but also make some changes in the way he did things, right? And it a greater emphasis of time on certain things. So yeah, it is interesting to see some of the mental gymnastics. Clearly, the narrative's being pushed out. If you look at it,
this is a narrative push.
All of Miami Twitter got the memo on the same day. Miami has 8 projected starters that are products of the transfer portal. FSU has 16. The Hurricanes are all in on their current record of developing their traditional recruiting signees and are stressing that to current recruits. They're lucky this is Twitter 280, not Twitter, what it used to be, 140, because otherwise the tweet might have cut off at the Hurricanes are all in on their current record, and that would be not a great tweet to send.
Twitter 140, absolutely.
Remember that? God, we're old, bro.
We're old, dog.
This is quite old.
Remember way back in the day, if you weren't in front of a computer or like you didn't have like a pure smartphone, you could text 40404 or whatever, and it would get posted as a tweet. I remember.
Pepperidge Farm remembers.
Pepperidge Farm most certainly remembers.
All right, Southern Miss has named a quarterback.
Before you do that, let's thank our friends at
Yes.
Legendary Home Loans, the legendary team of Chad and Shannon. Two great guys that I believe more than 510 of our listeners have worked with now. Bud's worked with them twice. There is no better experience. I promise you won't have a better advocate through this process than working with Shannon Young. 844 FSU Loan, 844 FSU Loan. Obviously, the landscape has changed some over the past 8 or 9 months. But if you're in the market looking for a house and to go through that process with as a good advocate on your side as possible when it comes to the mortgage process, I can promise you that the legendary team is undoubtedly the best team. So thank you again for those guys for the historic level of support they've provided to the Nolecast.
Also, congrats to Mike and Shelby, who live pretty close to me, it looks like. And they just bought a lovely home. And like the next time I take my son to go see the zoo, it looks like it's fairly close to the zoo. There's a good little barbecue place. We can go and just be really loud, which is kind of like, it's weird when you have kids, man. You're like, how do I choose where to eat? It's like, where can my kids just be loud and not disturb everybody?
Is that the new promo offer in the world of higher interest rates? You go to lunch with Bud if you work with Legendary Home Loan?
Look at that.
Okay.
We could probably do that. During the season, I'm fairly busy, but after like postseason, I'm definitely open to that. There's a good little trampoline park up there too, which is very needed. Indoor trampoline park in this kind of. I know it's been hot in Atlanta. Florida folks will tell you it has been.
It's been a past couple of weeks in Tallahassee, and it has been just unspeakably hot. So
a little warm. All right, so Southern Miss has named a starting quarterback. They've got a couple guys banged up right now that I'm monitoring. We'll talk about that more during their preview. I'm not going to waste a ton of time previewing Southern Miss right now. We'll have to do that for like 40 minutes. Maybe we'll get a beat writer on. I know a couple of them. Boston College looks like they're going to continue to use both quarterbacks. Do you remember the Castellanos kid who FSU recruited like 2 years ago? He wanted to play. He was from Georgia. He wanted to play quarterback. Georgia and FSU wanted him to play running back. And he ended up signing with UCF to play quarterback.
I do. Yes. Yeah.
So this kid was at UCF. UCF, they kept their quarterback who they loved, the John Rice Plumlee kid, who FSU also recruited back in the day.
Yeah.
And
the law firm.
Yeah, right. So UCF's quarterback or receivers coach went to Boston College. So Mikey Keene also went to BC from UCF. And Castellanos went with him as well. So it looks like it'll be those two dudes for BC. The most encouraging note, just trying to stay positive here about all the opponents, unless they're just, acting a fool on Twitter. Boston College is not having to use defensive linemen on the offensive line this year. So, I know Jeff Hafley probably is sleeping a little bit better that he's not having to do that. And I'm not having to look at the depth chart and say, who the hell is this guy? Right. And then scroll down to the defensive side because they literally had to do that last year. And they lost to UConn after they played FSU. So I think they're about
is a nooner.
Is it really?
It is. It's been decided. I think I'm sure someone will tell me otherwise, but I think it's because the ACC Network wants to feature like Clemson playing some non-marquee school. I'll put it that way. That's strange. And I wish, not that you're ever going to get a great environment at Boston College, but so I talked to a guy that was on Clemson staff about 18 months ago or something like that. And he told me that the two biggest challenging places to play for them with their kids, and he was coaching when they had a pretty stacked roster, was Boston College and Wake Forest. Because you go to those stadiums and they're like energy vortexes. Like you go
Yeah.
there, you hear yourself warming up, you hear individual guys clapping, and it's literally like it just sucks the life out of you. And a noon game in Boston is a is a unique challenge. Um, yeah, I was surprised to see that set as a noon game. That for me, and Boston College is a better program than I think. Well, they do a decent job. I think their head coach, despite his record over the past year or two, is probably a better coach than that record shows. And they're always a physical football team. But yeah, I guess good that you get them earlier in the year. A noon kick always catches my attention when you're going up there.
The if you're Miami and you're not playing to get to the conference title game, but you've already made a bowl, so you're in that sort of like sweet spot where you already have 7 wins, but you're not going to get to 10. I don't know if I really want to end the season at Boston College, which very well could be fighting for bowl eligibility in that final game hosting the Hurricanes. So just something to think about if we're thinking about Schadenfreude 4 months in advance. Clemson, kind of all the right things are being said, basically, about Clemson so far in these practice reports. But I'm kind of in see it to believe it mode on these receivers, I guess. I'm not trying to be negative, not trying to hate. I buy some of the stuff. Like I buy the O-line is better because they returned 4 or 5. And I know they have recruited the position better, somewhat better in recent years. And I buy the secondary growing up because they had a whole bunch of 5-stars who were playing as true freshmen last year. But I'm like a little skeptical on these receivers really being that much better. Like we'll see how much better they really are. That's kind of the main thing out of camp. They do have, I guess Wayne Woodaz, their linebacker, said he gained 25 pounds since the bowl game by drinking 12 protein shakes a day over the course of spring and summer, and is now up to 230.
Okay, up to 230. Okay, wow, yeah. So I'll be interested. I'm guessing by the time he plays Florida State, that 230 is probably going to be closer to 221.
Yeah.
But that's interesting. Okay.
Jeremiah Trotter, who was their best linebacker, because Barrett Carter's kind of a hybrid, has a hamstring. Dabo said this morning that he would play today if there was a game today, but he's resting because they know what he can do, which, I mean, yeah, every program is doing some load management. Right now, Virginia Tech did go ahead and announce that Grant Wells is the starter for them. I think that's a bad sign if you're a Hokies fan because I don't think he throws the ball well, which I like my quarterbacks to do.
Yeah.
And they took the Drones kid from Baylor, and I just don't think that's worked out to their satisfaction. I mean, obviously, because he's not starting, and Grant Wells had like a 30% success rate throwing football last year, which is, again, we're trying to be positive on this stuff, right? Oh, Vatek is much better at receiver this year, like considerably better. I think all 3 of their starters are transfers from who are like proven route runner, good players from the FC or from not the FCS, but the G5. So I do expect them to uptick there. The defensive line and offensive lines are a little bit kind of diminished. Did you see the report from Andrew Adelson?
Not about Virginia Tech. No.
I'll send this to you. It's a long read and it's a worthy read. Like I set aside like some time over some coffee and just go through it. It's pretty amazing. Like all the infighting they've had there post Beamer. It seems like it's hard to do a transition, man. It is easy to talk about.
It's hard to do a transition, and that was always going to be a little bit of a challenge because I know like Virginia Tech, and you think about recruiting in state, but like that main talent pool is like 3.5 hours away. You know, like when you're recruiting the 757, you're trying to get kids to go out to what is essentially Roanoke. And culturally, it's about 10,000 miles away. So I was always curious how much that program was going to be able to keep, the Newport News, Virginia Beach area on lock. And when you think about the Virginia Tech teams from like 98 to 2006 or so, when they were really at their apex of talent, they got pretty much everybody out of that zip code that they wanted to. And you knew that once you lost your stranglehold on that, it was going to be hard to, when you weren't just pipelining the Mike Vicks and D Hall and all those guys that were ridiculous level athletes. It became real tough real quick. So
there's a line in there. There's a couple lines actually, and clearly, I don't know who put this together. I think Andrew does a great job, but like this reads like Pry needs some time to me, and he probably does. To be frank, they decided that for the new weight room, they were not going to buy new weights because weights weigh the same, which I guess in theory actually is not a terrible idea. In practice, it works terrible if you're doing this during COVID and the old weight room was not locked up and your old weights all get stolen. So then you have a new weight room and no weights.
No weights. Okay.
And of course, supply chain issues have happened.
Yeah.
And I guess the dorm they were going to for their like offsite practices didn't have air conditioning, which I don't know. Like Vatech is in the mountains enough. I was in the mountains the other day.
Southside Virginia is hot, man. I just haven't just been a week up there. I can assure you, Virginia in the summer is a hot ass place. What's been the general reception of Marv? I'm just curious.
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll kind of follow that one with interest on the development there for sure. So I don't know, man. Like I gotta tell you, being up in North Carolina, I was in Banner Elk over the weekend, kind of up in the mountains, beautiful spot, and it was like so much cooler than Orlando. Just, I mean, it was
yeah.
I had to like wear a jacket in the morning. It was like 44, like in the mountains, but I don't know. Maybe Vatech's not that high up. Probably not. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's not. Blacksburg is you start to get into the rolling hills there, but it's not. It's not a temperature change. I'll put it that way. And we'll move on to Virginia topography. To football
Syracuse.
Podcast,
all right. The important thing to know about Syracuse camp is that Schrader, the quarterback, took all of the reps in the most recent scrimmage, and like that doesn't sound interesting. It is interesting because he was hurt in spring and didn't play at all in the first scrimmage or something like that because they were resting the arm. Like any kind of thing like that is immediate alarm bells for me as somebody who's like trying to project the season. Like when Penix missed like 3 days in a row at Washington, it's like, all right, is he hurt or are they just really load managing? But apparently Dino said he took all the reps in the scrimmage, and Dino said they're deeper than they've ever been along the lines of scrimmage, which I think we've talked 3 or 4 years in a row now on the podcast. Like they're always one injury away from disaster. They also had 5 players drafted and 4 players transfer out to major Power 5. So I don't know that Syracuse's retention game is quite what some schools in the league is. We'll see. Duke. I totally forgot to do notes on Duke, and I apologize. Eli Pankall, who is their best receiver, is out for the year.
Okay.
So that's
Duke. Look, I'm not trying to clown on myself. I think Duke's a little bit of more of a challenge than people give them on this year's schedule. I know Florida State's never lost to Duke. This team should absolutely road grade Duke. But Duke, probably a couple years too late, but has kind of gotten serious about football. I mean, they made a legitimate hire, and they have some levels of support behind them that they've never had before. Again, probably needed to do this more in like 2008 or 9 rather than 2022. But Duke is trying, and they've made some rather serious commitments behind football that they've never made prior. So
Duke opens the year hosting Clemson. What do you think the odds are of Duke to win?
Aren't they like 12-point underdogs, something like that?
Yeah. They're like 3.75 to 1 to win the ball game outright.
Okay,
like, that's not a 90% game. Like
Yeah.
Duke is decent enough. The quarterback for Duke, like if for some reason Jordan had some regression, which I clearly don't project because he's been playing extremely well. The kid they have at quarterback at Duke is like one of the few guys who, if he played at his absolute best and Jordan slipped a little bit, Riley Leonard could like be above him within the league. You know what I'm saying? Not that I'm projecting it to happen, but he is sort of one of these ceiling kids to where, I mean, he was pretty nuts last year. I don't know if you looked at his numbers, but so he was 20-6 touchdown interception, success rate 47%, which is really pretty nuts. 12 yards per completion, and he also was their leading rusher at 100 design rushes for 800 total and 13 touchdowns on the ground. Big time basketball kid as well. So he'll be a pain. You should just out athlete these guys, honestly. As long as you take the game seriously, you should be okay. And obviously, losing Pankall is a fairly big deal for a team that doesn't have amazing weapons on the outside. Wake Forest lost Donovan Green, one of their top receivers, likely for the season, kind of that 3 to 5 month range. So maybe there's some chance he's back towards the very end of the year. I'm still pretty skeptical about their defense, and MJ Griffiths, they seem to have a lot of confidence in the quarterback replacing Hartman, but Hartman still had very good numbers outside of the slow mesh, like on 3rd and long type stuff. He seemed to make some pretty good plays. Part of that's Wake always has really good receivers. I got a bunch of crap for saying Wake had better receivers than the Irish on Cover 3 the other day, and I was like, check the tape, check the draft, like watch any games back to back. And I didn't think it was a crazy take, but Irish fans are at the throat. Pitt's got a lot of confidence in Phil Dracovic. I don't know, that 2021, the 2021 game or 2020 game at BC where FSU won, like just beat him to a pulp, and he still kept playing and making plays. That always kind of some respect for him right there.
Yeah.
I don't want to do North Alabama. We already did Miami.
Yeah.
Gators.
Graham Mertz, every time I see a clip, I'm like, better get ready for that.
I don't really believe it, but I can't dismiss it with like 100% dismissal confidence, right? It's more of like he was an elite recruit. Clearly, like the last couple of years in Wisconsin, they were not managing the program as well as they needed to. There is some chance that the Gators have unlocked something here. Some chance.
Okay.
Some chance. But I still have a hard time really thinking that he's going to be like an upper third quarterback in that league.
I mean, look, I'm not trying to be radio shock jock. If Graham Mertz is an upper third quarterback in the SEC, now granted the SEC, the quarterback play is not what it was from a negative perspective, like 5 or 6 years ago, but it's not where
it's also
you
not what it was last year.
League is. Yeah.
I mean, think of who they lost.
I'll give $500 your favorite charity if Graham Mertz is a top 35% quarterback in the SEC.
Yeah.
All right. Let me put it that way.
I don't think you're wrong to have confidence that he's not. Now they did lose some important players on the defensive line, and what's his name? Justice Boone, who was one of their 2 starting defensive ends. I think this kind of matters, at least in my numbers, because they had a kid, Pal Ryland, who was an edge rusher, who there was some kind of issue there. I'm not really sure what it was, but he transferred to Vatech, and apparently he's in line to play for the Hokies. So Florida may be kind of thin at pass rusher. I think they're probably pretty good up the middle. O-line looks to be a little bit healthier now than it did coming out of spring. Out of spring, they had the kid who blew the Achilles, and they had the dude who was like, I'm going to transfer. And they're like, you're not a graduate. You really can't transfer. So like, might as well just stick it out. He had hurt the shoulder. He apparently is back in the starting lineup. I don't know, man. Like I took the Gators over on their win total. I think that they're going to make a bowl. I don't think that they're like a 4-8 team, but I don't know. It's hard to play all these true freshmen at receiver and kill it, especially if Graham Mertz is your quarterback.
Yeah.
So
one way to kill it is to work with Matt Lewis and his team at Congruity. CongruityHR.com is the website. Had a significant amount of inquiries recently surrounding that, and Matt and his team are still crossing the T's and dotting the I's on some of these, but I think we're going to have some pretty significant additions to announce, and really excited about that. As I'm fond of saying, I worked with Congruity at my previous place of employment, worked with them now on in both the Nolecast and the Battles In. And look, there's challenges, there's things that pop up in the course of running a business. And to be able to call somebody like Matt Lewis is a hell of a luxury. And I would encourage any of our listeners, whether it be payroll, HR, Matt and his team also have some pretty exciting benefit offerings that I'll detail in future episodes as well. So some people that you would want to partner with, certainly in our opinion. Again, feel free to reach out to me via social or shoot me an email, and I'm happy to put you in touch with the people that we work with and who we enthusiastically endorse. So again, thank you to Matt and his team at Congruity.
absolutely, that is fantastic, and I hope we can announce those very soon. Do we want to do DBs tonight?
Let's just push. I mean, probably not fair to do a position preview, 50 minutes into an episode. So
Yeah,
we'll do DBs. Probably have it out on Friday for everybody. The Mason Smith news paired with some other things, just general
the
poultry
chicken
talk.
farming.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to not talk about chicken farming. So,
do you think like if Ruiz goes away, are we going to start doing like Purdue stock price update? Like we should just have like a random, like somewhat program related price update.
It'd be like, yeah, we'll just have commodity talk. Absolutely. We'll take, poultry, pork belly, coffee.
Gosh. Do you know what this is about?
What's that?
Mason Smith and Keyshawn Butte participated in an autograph signing in the summer of 2021.
Oh, that makes a whole lot more sense. Okay.
Prior to NIL going live, Butte served a 1-game suspension during the 2022 season. He missed the New Mexico game for the birth of his son and the UAB game for what Brian Kelly said was the flu. Smith would have served his suspension last year also, but was injured.
Yes.
The NCAA made LSU aware Smith would serve the suspension in the season opener earlier this summer.
Okay. All right. That helps to provide some much needed perspective as to
if LSU knew that they were going to have to serve a suspension and they knew the kid blew the ACL. Don't you just kind of withhold that info and be like, well, for imaging purposes, we're going to need to let the swelling go down. He's going to be suspended, suspend him for that week.
I would have said that he came back last year, for the SEC championship game, and we really want to play this kid.
Yeah.
So,
sorry, guys.
You let us know whether or not this can count, or if we can get him out there against Alabama. Yeah. Or get him out there against Georgia. Excuse me.
Against Georgia. We're like, and they missed him. They gave up like 38 points in the first half of that ball game, which was, that's
okay.
That is
autographs.
Really
that's how it can happen. Interesting. All right.
Autographs before NIL was legal.
Well, it was legal. They just not the first. Autographs are kind of tricky from an NIL perspective. I'll put it that way, because you've got to pay fair market. You can't do the Johnny Manziel where you pay, $50,000 for 5 signatures or something like that. So, that makes a little bit of sense to me.
What if the guy did calligraphy?
Yes. Well, that is I mean, just from being married recently, I'm familiar with how much
Yeah,
you
I
get
know.
ripped off for bringing in calligraphy.
That's why I'm bringing it up.
That
Yeah,
is
I
a
remember
multiple. That is a price multiplier, bud. You're absolutely right about that. That's a great
bro.
point.
Look, we're just hacking the NIL game. Look at that. Oh man. All right. We should probably end the podcast now. Outro.
Funny. All right, y'all. I thoroughly enjoyed it. A little bit of a less formal Nolecast. We will have the DB position preview for you coming up next. Thank you so much for your
Oh,
support.
Matt's tailgate.
Yes, thank you.
We
Thank
should
you,
probably
bud.
discuss the Madison Social Tailgate.
We will discuss the Madison Social Tailgate, and we will open with the Madison Social Tailgate. So never want to short our friends over there. LaborDayTailgate.com. Again, LaborDayTailgate.com. Look forward to seeing many people out there and giving some TBE members passes to that as well. So excited to see a bunch of friends. And with that, we'll wrap up this episode of the Nolecast, and we'll be back shortly with a DB preview.